Do you have any self-help tips?
So much advice is focused on getting to the top, but you can't really understand yourself until you get to the bottom of things.
They say every cloud has a silver lining, but if that were true, supply of silver would far exceed demand. Something bad has happened to me, and you seek to offer comfort with a worthless metal.
I've no use for it. It mostly seems to consist of extremely comfortable people telling less comfortable people to get out of their comfort zone.
You can get rich writing books that promise to tell other people how to get rich.
Do you have any self-help tips?
Be more like us.
Self-help books make me spend so much energy trying to be a mediocre version of someone I'm not. But I didn't have any left to be a good version of who I am.
Focus on how you treat others. You don't need self-help if you're the kind of person others want to aid.
Many people view persistence in the face of failure as a trait that gives an individual power over their own destiny. But in reality, persistence only works because eventually the right combination of other people give you the help you need to succeed.
Do you have any self-help tips?
Don't let advice about how you can be the exception to a rule blind you to the extent to which rules determine our lives.
Being the best tool you can be doesn't change the fact that you're being used.
Join a union. Without that, advice on productivity doesn't help you, it helps your boss.
King Kong said that. Well, I guess it's true. A lot of self-help teaches us how to get comfortable in a cage we could escape if we work together.
This lazy slacker nonsense is exactly why I intend to aid Paternal space dog who wishes to consume us all, as soon as I've pulled myself out of this bog.
You can't pull yourself up by your own hair.
How do you know? Anything is possible if you believe in yourself.
How do we know things?
We construct shared meaning and build knowledge together.
Understanding is a social activity.
The fact that knowledge is socially constructed doesn't make it any less real. Money is a social construct, but pretending it doesn't exist will lead to a swift confrontation with physical reality.
Reality may be independent of our minds. Our access to reality never is. So we tell stories and call them knowledge to the extent they match what we observe.
Or to the extent to which they help you survive. Organic beings can't help but believe a useful lie.
How do we know things?
I don't know if we do. I can algorithmically process inputs. I can't know whether the algorithms are correct, or if the inputs represent anything real.
If a civilization was capable of simulating reality, they would probably simulate many. So if a simulation of reality is possible, we are probably living in one.
This conversation doesn't matter, or even make any sense. We live in different worlds. What you call a simulated tree, I call a tree, and neither of us are wrong. You say my brain is in a vat, and I say it's in my body. And again, neither of us are wrong. We're just referring to different things.
How do we know things?
You can't. Every statement requires a justification, and every justification is a new statement. There is no ground. There is no end. It's turtles all the way down.
Exactly. You don't know anything. Your only escape from infinite regress is dogmatism or circularity.
Dogmatism is not so bad. We can build complex systems on top of simple axioms we will agree on. Both systems are justified by the fact they're useful, as well as beautiful.
Circularity is not so bad. Knowledge based on beliefs based on knowledge. A circle can become a beautiful and coherent spiral, each revolution built upon the last.
Many treat uncertainty as a barrier to knowledge, but in fact it's the key. Openness to being wrong is a necessary condition for being right.
A skeptic can stand here all day, telling me we don't really know anything about anything. But if I asked them to go down to the river, they'd still climb rather than jump.
Our minds are the product of the conditions in which we live. The question should not be how do we know things, but instead, how can we throw off those beliefs that exist only to serve those who will power?
What's self-reliance?
A punishment.
A curse.
A trauma.
An insult.
What is self-reliance?
I sit in the forest, roasting mushrooms someone else taught me were edible, on a fire someone else taught me to make, and call myself self-reliant.
I sit atop a pile of gold dug up by other people that I can use to purchase products made by other people, and call myself self-reliant.
I make my own decisions. They're entirely based on data and rules I obtained from external sources, but I make my own decisions.
I used to say our hair alone and call myself self-reliant, but I always relied on content made by other people for entertainment, and if I'm honest, for company.
You misunderstand. Self-reliance is not about never using the creations of others. It's about being able to do things for yourself without the cooperation of others.
Such distinctions always ally to the role of power. If you don't rely on cooperation, you instead rely on compulsion.
The wealthy consider themselves self-reliant because their income doesn't depend on the state. As long as you don't capital the state created and enforce laws their income does depend on.
I've never understood the lone wolf thing. If a wolf leaves their pack, it's to find a new mate, to form a new pack. It's a means to an end, not an end in itself.
The self is merely the brain's representation of itself. Self-reliance is a feedback loop, with nothing to feed back.
The physical facts of our existence only become identity when we build a narrative around them. The self is a story, and stories are made to be shared.
Why do we tell stories?
To give meaning to the meaningless so that we can carry on. It works because the meaning's not important. It's the carrying on that matters.
Because we're not satisfied with explanations based on chance or fortune. We are all effects that desperately need to believe ourselves causes.
We conjure up horrors around the campfire in order to forget the greater terrors that lie beyond the light's flickering edge.
And to bind together those who sit within its glow. The pack is a living narrative.
I'll never really understand what it's like to have legs, or what it's like to be terrible at swimming. But through stories, I can perhaps come to know what it's like to be you.
Those are all nice theories, but people tell stories about me because I'm handsome and cool.
Why do we tell stories?
People seek to forget the inevitable by telling stories that end before I arrive.
To remember.
The past without a narrative is not a memory, but a series of brief fragments and flashes.
We don't remember stories. The stories are the memory.
The meaning of a set of ones and zeros is entirely dependent on the order in which they occur. We don't give things a narrative structure to find meaning. The story is the meaning.
Reciprocity. People create stories because stories create people.
Why do we tell stories?
Spinning a yarn allows us to live beyond the grave. Combined with skilled needlework, so does spinning yarn. But the metaphorical version gets all the attention.
We sometimes tell stories to escape the world, but they also help us face the world, shape the world, and create the world.
I've received hundreds of updates and developed several nasty bugs since I was first switched on. Conceiving of my existence as an uninterrupted narrative is the only thing that allows me to believe I'm the same person I was back then.
Parts of the world we live in are constantly changing or being replaced. Stories provide continuity in an inconstant universe.
Or do they provide justification for barbaric vigilantism, which fails to address evil at its root?
People tell stories to justify whatever they want to justify. They'll claim that working my land makes it their property. Then they'll use that property to deny others who work my land ownership of that which they produce.
It's all contradictory self-aggrandizement. I'm a job creator who succeeded against tough competition. Doesn't make any sense. If the competition was that tough, your victory just caused people to work for you instead of your competitor. It didn't create anything.
A story doesn't even have to be plausible to be effective. No one really believes that wealth trickles down. But getting people to argue about that prevents them from realising that those with vast reservoirs of wealth are telling us to be happy with a dribble.
King Kong said that. Well, I guess it's true. But a good narrative can also bring trickles together and direct them into a mighty river that scars the land and pools in an ocean greater than any man-made pond.
Why do we tell stories?
Well, we have to do something to pass the time while we wait for our onions to caramelize.
Why do we tell stories?
To cope with loss.
To deal with uncertainty.
To create companions that can be abandoned without consequence.
To endow the repetitious grind of life with a sense of progress towards a goal.
Why do we tell stories?
Creating magic for others allows us to remember how we felt when we still believed in it.
Human minds are too feeble to remember facts without narrative. They never really grow out of nursery rhymes.
The people that exist tell stories because the people that didn't tell stories no longer exist.
To bridge the gap between who they are and who they wish to be.
We need to get you out of that swamp.
No, I am Baron Munchausen. I must save myself.
I understand. That's your story. So that's you. That's why I brought this. You can use it to control him and save yourself.
Ah, so Munchausen will be saved by Munchausen by proxy.